the morning sunrise. In Lions Gate, 'neath the tall fir trees, on your face feel the ocean breeze. Feel the magic that's in the air. In Lions Gate, the fair.
Recording has now started.
Thank you, Nitry. So, welcome all to another wonderful award-winning Lion's Den. My wife is brilliant in coming up with that. I didn't think of it, and I just love it. As Alexander Dumas once said, never fear quarrels, but seek hazardous adventures. This week, we delve into the spirited world of the suave swordsman, the cosmopolitan cavaliers, the courtly courtesans, and the affable adventurers. These are the realms for those with hearts yearning for duels and well-armed damsels. Welcome to the world of Rapier. Our four panelists tonight are Lady Savia Salvaggio de Vitorio, Lady Gizela Nitry, His Excellency Master Guidobaldo Marco Odo Romeo de Aquila, and Master Jean Warwick Dracar. Lady Savia has graced us before with her powerful presentation on gender in the SCA fighting communities, and as always represents an important voice for helping our fighting communities move towards better gender equality and support. Lady Gizela Nitry comes to us from the Barony of Lions Gate and received her AOA in 2016. She is a student to Mistress Alessandra at Order of the Pelican. We are honored to have both of these ladies here tonight. Baron Guidobaldo received his white scarf in 1995. Since then, he has gone on to be Rapier Champion of Tiri, the Queen's Rapier Champion of Antir. In 2000, he received entrance into the Order of the Laurel, and in 2015 was invited into the Order of Defense, I believe the third in the kingdom. He is known for his knowledge, sixth in the kingdom. I see him holding up his hands. He is known for his knowledge on the late period rapier techniques. Master Warwick has been Rapier Defender of Lions Gate, Kaymore, Lionsdale, and received his white scarf in 2010. He has been Kingdom Cut and Thrust Marshal of Antir and received his Honored Marshal of Antir in 2015. In 2017, he was entered into the Order of Defense. He also happens to be my protege. And so, dear audience, help us welcome our guest hosts and panel. And as always, be kind, aim for the heart.
Hi everyone, and welcome. I'm Kiva. I've been asked to be your moderator tonight. I have a number of themes I'm hoping we can touch on. How I'd like to move forward is I'm going to ask a question and invite one of the panelists to respond. And then before we open it up for all the panelists to respond how they wish. I'd like to start by asking each of our panelists their origin story. How did you find the SCA? I thought we would start with Lady Savia.
Sure. I found the SCA back in 2012, I think it was. And I just stumbled on a practice. Honestly, I had an incredibly tall friend and he's very hard to miss. And I was pretty sure it was him. So I walked over and I checked it out, and that's where I started. Here in Ramsgard, so Kamloops, BC.
Wonderful. Anyone, how about Gizela? How did you find the SCA?
I had a friend in London, like in England, and he had joined Hema and was talking about all the cool things he was doing. And I was like, oh, okay, swords are cool. And then a friend of mine said that she knew some people in the SCA. And so in 2016, I just she like drove me up to a Seagirt all thing, dropped me off there, and suddenly I had a sword in my hand, and it was really cool.
It's wonderful. Your Excellency Guido, how did you find the SCA?
So I was driving around with a friend of mine, and we pulled across a field of tents with people fighting and thought, this looks like it might be fun. So
that's awesome.
In 1980.
1980, oh my goodness. I would have been too. Okay. Warwick, what about you?
I was invited to a Clinton. My brother's girlfriend had been going to Clinton, and so they invited myself and my wife at the time to go. And we showed up in our Value Village clothing. And Azur almost immediately whisked my then wife away and put her into a very pretty dress. And somebody gave me a sword later on in the afternoon, and that was about it.
That's wonderful. Okay, so in terms of topics, when did you actually start doing Rapier, and what was the culture like then? I think we'll start with Master Guido.
So when I joined Rapier was not actually legal in Ontario. There was no sort of martial structure. It was not something we were supposed to be doing. It was not one of the accepted weapons forms. So it was something we did off in the corner with where nobody could see us using modern Olympic equipment. But I think the first time we did it sort of in a legal SCA sense, I was living in Seagard at the time. And we were still using steel modern Olympic blades. Epées were the sort of the weapon of choice at that time. So yeah, that's about where I started, I guess, legally in the SCA for Rapier combat.
Anyone else want to say how they sort of discovered Rapier and what the culture was like when they joined?
Sure. I started out in heavy, actually, because that's what somebody gave me heavy kit, so I started doing heavy, and then the heavy kit went missing, and the person who was responsible for the heavy kit going missing replaced it with Rapier kit, which was an epée turned sideways and shoved into a saber belt. And that was around the time most people were using fiberglass. And I used that for a little while, and then the Schlagers came out, and I got my hands on an actual Schlager. So I kind of showed up around when Guido was just banning, well, Guido banned fiberglass a few years later than that, after that, I think. So I joined when it was sort of transitioning into fiberglass, and we still had épées at the time. And I was fighting in a kilt. Sorry. I apologize.
I'll keep that in mind. Gizela, what about you?
I mean, I joined pretty recently, so I feel like there wasn't a huge change between when I started and now, but
maybe how about your first impressions?
I think my first impressions was that I was like slightly terrified because I'd been hermiting really hard before I joined the SCA, and then just kind of like, it's like, oh, there's all these things I can do. There wasn't too much instruction at the beginning. Like I'd show up to fight practice and it was mostly heavies for a while. And so like a few people would be like, oh, you're interested in Rapier. And they'd, show me if they had a Rapier on hand, they'd like show me a few things. So I started off learning some lunges and basic stuff. And then things picked up a bit. Dalmatiu came out to teach me a lot of things, and that was really awesome. And then fight practice just got a lot bigger, and it was great. And at the time, Connell was Baron, and he was teaching as well, and it was lots of fun. And then I started getting off the island and going to events. And, yeah.
Savia, how about you?
Well, when I started, there was a pretty thriving Rapier community at the time. There's a lot of newcomers. A lot of them were my friends from high school. So it was a very comfortable environment for me. And I would say overall a super supportive environment too for Rapier fighters. There's still obviously a lean to heavy, but it definitely felt like a pretty equal footing for both. So it was a good environment all around.
Beautiful. Great, that's good to hear. So what were you wearing when you first started fighting, and what do you wear now? And I'll let Master Warwick field that one first.
So my initial guard was terrible. I think like the very first time it wasn't terrible. It was adequate. It was just black pants and a white shirt and a black vest. But then I decided I wanted to wear a kilt, and I had no idea how to make a kilt or how to find a kilt. So I went into Value Village and I got myself a kilt, and it was a girl's kilt. It was a schoolgirl kilt, and I ironed out the front of it so it'd be flat, and then I left the pleats in the back. But it was still very clearly a schoolgirl's kilt. And I had a little strip of sort of matching tartan that I wrapped around my shoulder, and I pinned it all together. And from there, I graduated to a great kilt, because the internet kind of happened around then, and there were all these resources became available, and I learned how to make myself a great kilt out of 9 meters of tartan wool, which was amazing at Clinton when it's 85 or 90 degrees, let me tell you.
Anyone else? What did you start with? What do you wear?
I started with just basic loaner gear. There's a pretty good stock of loaner gear where I came from. So there was already doublets. Most of them were definitely not suited to fit me. I'm a very petite person, but they did the job. They kept me safe. But yeah, I borrowed garb. So basic doublet and black pants. Nothing special.
So when I started, it was the classic fencing jacket under a puffy shirt with a pair of black pants. And the shirt belted at the waist. It looked really quite comical when you think about it. Renaissance.
So, I mean, one question is, of course, how do you find garb that's appropriate for heavy fighting, or how do you alter your garb? Do you need to alter your garb to fight in? How do you make that jump? Lady Gizela, how do you tackle that question?
It was kind of interesting because when I initially picked a persona, I picked a persona that was in the 9th century, so not they weren't really rapiers at the time. So then I was like, I'll just try doing a Polish hussar kind of persona. So then I was learning how to sew 2 different types of garment. Yeah, I started off with like the loaner kit as well, and I was wearing this really heavy brown jacket thing that was like horrible in 38-degree weather. So I just felt very motivated to get some linen and throw garb together. Yeah, really fortunate that like so many people are willing to share their sewing knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've found now is if I'm going to dress properly for my time period and area, I actually don't have to make very many modifications to what I'm wearing because there's so much fabric that I pass any puncture tests. So it makes life a lot easier. That as I get really annoyed at having things hanging off of me that catches and confuses blades. I prefer to keep things as clean as possible. So now I've just gone to a padded gambeson instead. Just makes things a lot cleaner in my opinion.
What's your take on that, Savia?
I like to look pretty all the time if I can. So most of my
it's hard for you not to look pretty.
Well, thank you. I like my garb to look nice though most of the time, or adequate. So most of my garb is fighting garb already. It's something that I can wear on the field, and then I just don't change. I'll have a different undershirt for like court or something like that, but I wanted to make sure it was presentable for court and also usable on a field. Other than that, I have pretty dresses, and that's my non-fighting garb.
Is it harder for female garb to be to meet the bar for rapiers for safety? Like, is that a harder thing to do, or not?
I haven't tried. I mean, if you're talking female garb, I'm assuming you're needing like dresses and stuff. So I don't often wear dresses on the field. I don't like things getting in the way of my feet and stuff like that. So I just kind of steered away from that.
That makes total sense. When the next theme I have is awards, and I'm curious about this one. So what's the most meaningful award you've ever received? I thought maybe Lady Savia could start us off.
I don't have too many awards, but I would say probably the Silver Wolf that I got when I started returning to the SCA, which is a service award. That was pretty awesome. And it's encouraged me to continue trying to do stuff for the community as well.
That's awesome. Maybe like it could be an award, or like maybe a moment, just like your most meaningful.
I would say that. I thought about awards when I looked at that question, so that's pretty much it.
Anyone else? Meaningful award?
So for me, the most meaningful award I've received, honestly, has to be the Order of the Lions Rapier, because every other award I've received has been given by a group of people, and my ability, my fighting, that's the only thing that mattered. That's the only way I was going to get it, was to win. So
what is that award?
former Kingdom Champion.
Oh, okay.
So it's a bit conceited, but that honestly is my favorite award.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyone else?
I've received several favors from people I admire greatly, and so I sort of rotate through them. Sometimes Seth gave me an absolutely beautiful favor, and so did Olgar. And I don't know, they have a lot of personal meaning for me, so I sort of rotate through those depending, especially if I know I'm going to see them, I'll make sure I have those on.
Now, that's an interesting answer, because you have an unusual award in your OP. You have an award given by the Marshal community.
The honored Marshal of Ontario. Yeah, that was a real surprise.
So what can you tell me what's that award about?
So the Marshal community. So we have a lot of Marshals on tier, but we also have some Marshals that are really, really active. And we also have someone in our community who is an amazing data gatherer and analyst, and that would be Althea, and Mistress Althea. And so when she started gathering the data, she was actually able to start producing statistics on who's doing most of our authorizations, who's making most of our marshals, and you can actually take a look at who's super active and who authorizes and warrants across multiple disciplines. And I'm authorized and I'm warranted in a lot of disciplines, and I'm super active, and I've held multiple kingdom offices, KRM right now. And so what they do is they go to their active marshal community, especially previous holders of it, and they say, hey, do you have any recommendations for who should get this? It's a staff and it's a banner. And so they sort of make recommendations to the Earl Marshal, and I'm not sure where it goes from there. I don't know if it then goes to the King and Queen, or if the Earl Marshal makes the decision, or if the Earl Marshal speaks to their deputies. But at some point, there's a decision is made, and I was at a Crown, and they called me up and they awarded it to me. I believe at the time I was like either 1 or 2 in the kingdom for a number of people I'd authorized and warranted that year. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Gizela, do you have a special moment, a thing that you remember as part of your Rapier journey?
The name of the actual award is slipping my mind. It was the Chivalry Award at Baroness's Inspiration. It comes with the belt. I'm having a horrible leaky brain, but that's probably the best award that I've ever gotten in anything.
Those are my favorite awards. Like it's an award for being awesome. Like yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. One question I had here is when did we start getting into heavy rapier? What is a heavy rapier? And why was that change made? And I'm wondering if Master Guido could field that question first.
So heavy rapier is sort of a name that's given to the cut and thrust field. Here we would consider that more cut and thrust than heavy rapier. It's not a term you'd find most on the West Coast. And originally, the idea was to create a form of combat where we could do the period-styled techniques that we've always wanted to try that weren't technically legal under the rule set of rapier combat. So percussive cuts, basically, was the big thing. We weren't allowed to throw them, but we really wanted to try that. It was something we were really interested in. At that time, there was some new sort of people researching the Darty school of side sword combat, and that's primarily a percussive style, and that sort of was the driving force in this area for that style of combat to come about. And the first time we ever did that was myself and Don Balthazar at a 12th night fought a demonstration fight. And that was the first cut and thrust fight in Ontier before the crown. And that was quite a while ago.
Warwick, you have something to say?
Yeah, so, and thank you, Guido. That's, I wish I could have seen that very first fight. If you go east of Ontier, the word heavy rapier, it means something different than it means out here. Like when people out east talk about heavy rapier, that's what we call rapier. Like rapier for us is what some of the other kingdoms out east called heavy rapier, and they do that because they still have light rapier, which means they still have people using the Olympic weapons that we stopped using many years ago. And so they have two forms, and they differentiate between light rapier and heavy rapier. So what people call heavy rapier is rapier.
Okay, that's an important distinction. Okay, that helps.
At the society level, I mean, Ontier handles it a little differently.
So I'm curious, Gizela and Savia, how much have you been exposed to cut and thrust or heavy rapier and Ontier? Does it look appealing to you? What's your sense of it? Is that something you're interested in?
Gizela, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I'm super interested in cut and thrust. The only thing I would be worried about is the financial barrier of getting enough armor, right?
Okay.
Because I'd want to make
Totally
sure
fair.
that I'm in the safest possible gear. But apart from that, like honestly, it sounds extremely interesting. Just a way to try out all the different weapons that you can't really play with in rapier as much, and just get a feel for all the other things in the manuals and manuscripts that, you know.
So how is the armor different? Can you tell me what the basic kit is for rapier, and then what is it for cut and thrust?
Oh gosh.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is a pop quiz. Sorry. I can throw that open. Does anyone just want to quickly address that question?
For rapier, you need to have your puncture resistant stuff. You don't require any rigid armor except for having your gorget and obviously your helm.
The boys, the groin.
Yeah, and any particular crotch protection you would require. But it's different for cut and thrust. I believe you need rigid elbows and knees
And the
and
back of head.
hands and the back of your head protection. And then if you feel safer, adding a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would like to get into cut and thrust. I think it would be a lot of fun. I've taken some longsword classes outside of HEMA and stuff like that, which has been really, or outside of the SCA in HEMA, which has been really enjoyable and fun. So I think it'd be fun to do that in the SCA as well.
That sounds good.
Can I offer a fun fact?
Okay.
In Ontier, when we do cut and thrust, what we talk about as cut and thrust, we're talking almost exclusively about the weapons that Savia is talking about. Back swords, long swords, side swords, messers, right? We glory in using those weapons. But if you travel outside of Ontier, especially when you head east, you'll encounter kingdoms where they use their rapiers to do cut and thrust. And you don't, and some kingdoms are just like us. They're like, yeah, it's long swords and back swords all day. And other kingdoms, it's like they're using light rapiers to do cut and thrust. So there's a lot of interkingdom anthropology, and it can actually lead to some confusing conversations with people if you don't realize how they practice differently than yourself.
So Warwick, how did the introduction of cut and thrust change or alter the rapier community, or has it had a big effect on the community?
I think it allowed an outlet for, so we were blessed, and we still are blessed that so the progenitors of the steel combat here, people like Guido and many others, were very historically minded, right? But the rapier rule set is actually quite restrictive because it's always safety first. And there's a lot of things that you could do with a rapier that we're not allowed to do with a rapier. Throwing a percussive cut with 45 inches of a 3-pound sword that weighs 45 inches, and you're going to hit them with the top third of that blade wearing light rapier kit, there's the possibility of significant amount of damage. Guido and I might be able to do it, but that doesn't mean everybody can do it. And they don't want everybody doing that. And so before side sword came out, people were doing this type of stuff as arts and science demonstrations, right? And so clearly there was an outlet for this was needed. We were receiving translations of manuals were starting to come out because the community was very strong. And a lot of really smart people were delving into these manuals, and the original manuals we had, like William Wilson came out with his Degrassi, and people were producing this stuff. And Guido is itching to do a better job of this of this description, I'm sure. So as these things came out and people started discovering them and doing them, they realized that if you try to do Degrassi with a 42-inch rapier, it just doesn't work, because he was using a 36-inch spada. He was using a shorter, broader sword, and the progressions that he was teaching, at some point, they just stopped working. And so when you realize that rapier just wasn't really suited for the type of historical explorations that at least I wanted to do, and I'm sure Guido had been doing for years before I joined. And so cut and thrust allowed that. And then on tier, it became a real celebration of historical combat. And as I traveled other kingdoms handle it differently. Some are they're right on par with us, and others they're like it's just another tournament form for them, right?
So I find it very interesting because realistically, the rise of period combat in Ontario sort of went along with access to the internet. As the internet became stronger and stronger, and more information was on there, and people learned where to find it, you got more research into period combat, and then people started publishing books and doing translations on their own. And that was really, really what sort of drove the cut and thrust community to kind of step forward. As we got these books, we're going, well, I want to be able to do this, but the rules say I can't.
That's right.
So we started to allow that sort of thing to happen with this new form of combat, which for a while was sort of frowned upon. And we had to sort of relegate it to an arts and sciences demonstration as opposed to a competitive form of combat. But as we went on, we showed that it could be done safely with proper training and proper equipment. So it started to grow more and more. And then blade manufacturers got in on the deal and said, well, if people want to buy these, we're going to make the blades for them. And then things just exploded from there. Yeah. And that's where we are right now with the rise of HEMA. More people are making blades, more equipment is available. So now translations are commonplace.
I've got a bookshelf full of them now, right? I was working off of internet, like printed off things I got off the internet, and it would always be, it was just Degrassi and silver, and silver's not really appropriate for rapier because he hated the rapier, and it was Degrassi, and it was a terrible translation or terrible print of Degrassi. That's all we had for the longest time.
Yeah, that's so true. I remember that translation. It was absolutely awful. Now that I look back on it, it's one of the worst. But yeah, and honestly, there's one website out there that will give you every period manual that has been translated so easily. And one website, and it's all right there.
Wow. Do you have a link to that website or information for anybody?
At wictonhour.com.
Yeah, that's the free one.
The Wictonhour website. Every translation is sitting right there.
It's pretty much open source stuff. Like you can get some higher quality things by paying a little bit. There's the AMA library, it still exists, and there's a ton of stuff. The resources are now mind blowing.
So can I ask a very basic question? So you've rapier and then cut and thrust. Is it kind of like canoeing and kayaking, where you either do one or the other, and the other is looked down upon, or is it you often do both? It's much more of a okay.
So fun fact: if Guido and I are in the finals at QRC, we're both cut and thrust authorized. We can go throw our elbows and knees on, and we can have a cut and thrust final as per the rules in Ontario.
Interesting. Okay, so it behooves you to know both, to be ready.
Well, no, because if I'm only rapier authorized and Guido's cut and thrust authorized, then,
I see what you're saying.
Then we're going to do rapier, right?
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When I started in the SCA, I think it was less common to be authorized in both in 2012-ish. That's kind of the feeling I had when I joined, though, where it was cut and thrust was still kind of new and still a little off to the side and not as present as it is now. Now I see lots of people who are authorized in both, but when I started, it was definitely kind of one or the other-ish.
Back then, the blades were prohibitively expensive and extremely hard to find.
Also terrible.
And also truly, truly awful blades. That's improved over time. We've got much better equipment now
Look at this
at
thing.
better prices.
Look at this thing. It's horrible. Like, I'm not going to hit anyone with that.
Can I ask a follow-up question to our two members of the Order of the Defense? When you are considering a candidate, is knowing both of benefit? Is that something that you look for? Like, is a candidate more rounded if they have both, or is that as long as they're like great at Rapier, that's, or and other things that go into being a peerage? But
You want to start that? You want to take that, Guido?
I'll start that. Like any peerage, individual members have their own sort of standards that they're looking for. Personally, I don't particularly care if they do cut and thrust. My major concern is historical accuracy. I am not going to disqualify somebody based on it, but if they are historically accurate, I'm certainly going to be taking a better look.
okay.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I mean, and to the point where, I mean, I voted on some candidates that they may, you know, they may have been around the bar, but man, they look good when they fight, right? Because, you know, they just want to be historical, they want to look historical, they want to use historical techniques, and that, I mean, I love that. I mean, that goes pretty far with me.
Yeah, yeah, that echoes my experience with the Rapier community. That it is a celebration of those periods, of that late period. Je ne sais quoi, that's something that's there. So what are some of the changes you've seen in your time that are good, and what are things that you've liked that you haven't liked? Lady Gizela, do you want to start us off?
I feel like I haven't seen that much change. I mean, I guess I only joined a few years ago, but I feel like even in the short time that I've been in the SCA, cut and thrust has gotten bigger, like substantially, or at least I saw it more. Although maybe that's just because I got off the island more. I'm a little unclear on that.
What I mean, I guess what I'm driving at is, are there things as part of, that you see as part of the community that you think could use some depth, or you'd like to see changed? Are there things that you rub up against, maybe is the way to say it?
I feel like this has been pretty welcoming.
That's good.
Yeah, overall, I feel like my experience has been really positive, with a lot of people willing to help, but a lot of just kindness and generosity, time. Yeah,
That's good.
there aren't a lot of negatives that I found specifically.
That's awesome.
We've had a good time.
And anyone else? Is there anything that you think could use some growth, Master or His Excellency Guido?
Yes, but what we've seen has changed the most, and I'm going to say acceptance, overall acceptance in the SCA of Rapier combat and cut and thrust combat. I remember back in the 90s being at a non-tier West War and having a West Kingdom Duke sitting in camp drinking my coffee, telling me that what I do is not right for the SCA and I should do it somewhere else. To a point now where we have a society-wide peerage for Rapier combat.
Yeah.
So that's the major change that I've seen in my time.
I find, like, so I joined in 2012, and then I took about a 5-year break somewhere in the middle, and I came back 3-4 years ago. And I found there was actually, between that break that I took, there was already a culture change by the time I come back. Not that it was bad or negative before, but I think it was just kind of leaving the era of tough, if that makes sense. Like, I think people were a little bit more tough and they pushed themselves a little bit harder, and there's slightly less care for personal safety. And when I came back, there was more people saying, if you need a break, sit down, drink some water. You don't have to go for both rounds pin to pin on an open list field kind of, you know, tournament style. And there was a lot more just care and thought for that, for fighters' personal safety and to prevent injury as well, which I thought was really wonderful. And yeah, and then also the major difference was when I came back to the SCA, there was now the Masters of Defense. And when I left, that wasn't a thing yet. So.
Yeah, I've got a question, along that line, and just in just a bit. I'm really curious how the introduction of a peerage has changed your community. I think that's a really interesting thing. But we could get into it now. Like, how has the Order of Defense changed the Rapier community?
Ooh, that's a big one.
Anybody want to take a stab at it?
I don't. Guido looks like he
I
might.
have something to say, but I want to hear what somebody else says first.
Okay.
Okay.
Like different take.
So when I left the SCA, it was being discussed. There had been constant buzz and discussion about the white scarves potentially becoming a peerage, or there being a peerage, but it was still very confused as to how that was happening, at least for people who were not in the know like myself. And then when I came back, it was already established. So I missed the messy period in between, I think. But I know that it's kind of been a bit of a controversial topic for a bit. I think some people are happy with it and some people are not so happy with it. Or, you know, I think it's been good overall.
Gemma just has her hand up and is gesticulating wildly. Your Excellency, do you have a question?
I did, but it will derail what you're speaking about now. So
Okay. Do you want to post it in the chat and then we can track it?
I'll think about it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't see you soon enough.
No worries.
Warwick?
This is going to go back to a little bit to what we just said. When I got my white scarf, I joined at a time when kings were telling the order that they were doing a great job. And I understand that wasn't always the case. And so that's great. And then the Order of Defense formed, and I'm part of that as well. And I don't know if we're doing a good job, but I think we're still doing the same job. I don't think things have really changed. And I think the proof of that is when you look at who you have on your panel right now, you've got two middle-aged white men wearing collars and two young ladies representing the New Guard. And so I don't think that's any different than what the Order of the White Scarf was, which also didn't have a lot of female representation either.
Yeah, it's an issue in Ontario. I think you know, we were talking about that previously, that only 2 members are women out of 32 in the Kingdom of Ontario. I would be how do you address that as an order? How do you help kick in that door, or why is it the way that it is?
I think part of the problem, if I may jump in here, I think part of the problem is that the established rapier community at the time that the Masters of Defense was created was a primarily male-oriented organization. It's one of the things we've constantly fought with is sort of the recruitment and retention of female fighters. Retention being the biggest. We quite often recruited quite well, but keeping them in and keeping them interested was always an issue.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do to fix the problem, and it's a very small thing, but it's all I know how to do, is I take on female provosts, and I decided that I'm hell bent for life that these people are going to become Masters of Defense. Done. But that's all I know how to do, because I'm sort of that wired. I'm not a change the world. I may change my corner of it kind of person.
How does it feel hearing those words? I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I'm curious how people feel about being a part of a community that has this problem, as the heavy fighting has it too. I'm not trying to pick on Rapier. It's an issue.
Gizela, you look like you're.
Can I pop in on this one? Your Grace, can I pop in on this one?
Yes.
So, as the 3rd female white scarf in Ontario, I can tell you that in the way back days, it was incredibly difficult to get. It was incredibly difficult to get to the part where you could break the glass ceiling. I lived far enough away from downtown Ontario that a trip for us was easily 12 or 14 hours. You got out of the car, set up tent, hope to God that you felt okay in the morning, and then you fought and you fought and you fought and you fought and you fought, and then you got in the car and you went back home. And you did that as often as you could. And that was fantastic. And I was extremely and exceedingly lucky that I had a support system that was fantastic and really, really supported me. The culture in Avocal was a little bit different than it is in general downtown Ontario and Tyree, in that high-level rapier fighters were treated like high-level squires. We were treated and offered that sort of respect. So the slog uphill for women in rapier is one of those things that in 15 or 20 years, in my personal opinion, has not changed a whit. It is incredibly difficult to get there. It is incredibly worth it when you do, to know that you did that it was your effort and your blood, sweat, and tears that got you there. You're the only one in your armor. Nobody else can help you with that part of it. But having a family and having those mentors in it that are strong, vocal, encouraging, educated, and who really are going to do their best to change their corner of the world, that almost mattered more for me during my journey than my ability to hit you or to stab you. And that's not cool. For women, it should be your ability to move, to strike, to compete at your level of excellence for the things that your physiology will allow you to do. At my peak, there's things that I would have been able to do that Savia, as a tiny wee person, may not have had the physical strength to do. There's people who are much shorter than me, but yet Her Excellency Bridget still manages to pull off amazing things. In the way back time, if you had known Danya Bridget, though, and you had put Maestra Bridget with Danya Bridget and looked at the comparativeness between their physiological selves alone, you wouldn't have been able to find a bar between the two of them that was exactly parallel. So there also needs to be some play in that. And there needs to be an acceptance that women's physiology is only going to allow you to be able to produce so much power, and that our stamina is different, and the way that our adrenaline ramps is different, and the way that we have emotional dumps is different. And one of the things that I taught not all that long ago before COVID was that it's okay for you to have an emotional adrenaline dump on the side of the Eric. You know, if you need to have that cry and you just need to get that out, well, if that's acceptable in your own self, then do it, and do it in a public manner so that normalizes that, instead of going back to camp and hiding in shame. Whereas perhaps for a man, when they have that adrenaline dump, they just chuck their helmet across the field or something. Well, that's not how we roll generally. Okay, that's not how I roll. A greater acceptance of this, I think, would make admission into the order a little bit more transparent for people as well. So that's my 2P.
It's what is something that you think, you know, for people that are in leadership communities within the rapier community, like His Excellency Vito gave an example, a concrete example of something within his power that he is doing. What are some other things do you think that people could be doing to help support women?
Just listen. For God's sakes, keep your damn mouth shut and listen.
It's a good one.
Guido, you're doing this, and I want you to do this. No, I'm just kidding. Lady Savia, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I totally agree. Listening is a really good starting point, and I don't mean listening so that you can re-explain it back. I don't mean just listening and genuinely trying to understand. And you know what? Go out of your way. If you want to see more women get elevated, go out of your way to elevate them. Because there are women who are fighting that have stuck it out, that could use the extra push, the extra help. And if it means you have to spend extra time with them, I can do it.
There's a big difference between listening to me and hearing me, though.
That's true.
Because a lot of people can listen to me and I can blather on for forever and ever and ever, but hearing me and actually processing that information and doing something with it is an entirely different thing.
Yeah, I think people have been asking a lot too. Like, I know I get questions when we were going to events a lot about what to do. And, you know, we're here to support women fighters, but that hasn't changed since I started. Like that's this, I'm getting the same questions from when I started to now about like, we're here, we support women fighters, we want to see more women on the field, what can we do? And I'm like, we've been asking that for a long time. And people have definitely given answers, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the answers either haven't been applied or people aren't sure or aren't comfortable with applying them.
I think something else that we could be fostering, along with the 10 things that you can change in practice that came out of Lady Savia's TED Talk. One of the things that we could be doing, and I experienced this early on until I could prove a little bit that I had a clue. And again, more established fighters had a lot of influence on me. So I was able to come forward and say, you know what, I appreciate the fact that you've given me your opinion. I'm going to take that information and I'm going to use what's applicable to me. And I'm going to retain what you've told me, even if I don't feel that it's applicable to me. Could we possibly do this at practice instead of on the side of the Eric? Or 5 different men have rolled up to me and said, hey, you should try this. Okay, again, thank you. I appreciate your input. I'm going to use what you've given me that's applicable to me. I'm going to store the rest. And if you don't see that I'm processing it that way, perhaps speak to my peer. Like go and give your feedback to Guido or to Warwick or to Enzio. And if they're working with me, allow that information to trickle down to me through them instead of ambushing me where there's more of you than there is of me. And now I'm feeling a little bit like I'm being patted on the head and told that I'm cute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of feel like a token when that happens. And it's like, oh, cool. I always am a big fan of asking if somebody wants feedback, because sometimes I'm just not in the right space for it, or I've already gotten my feedback from the people I need, and that's all I can handle. So my brain can only handle so much.
Warwick, did you have something to add? I know you had your hand up on your own panel.
Sure. I totally agree with what Savia just said, and what Jen just said about going to somebody that you know is working with them, and rather than, I mean, especially in the middle of a tournament, for God's sake, just let them focus on what they're doing, yeah. Right? Or ask them after the tournament if they want to go and work on something together at most. But for the most part, I would definitely go through, and I don't care what their who they are, what their gender is. That's pretty standard. You don't want to mess up their day. But I've got a couple of I've had several wonderful female students, and I've learned a lot from them about teaching women, and it's different than teaching men, mm-hmm. because they are physiologically different. And what's really cool is my students, because I'm a pretty good, I think I'm a pretty good teacher, but in reality, when it comes to teaching body mechanics to women, I'm not really very good at that, right? Because I'm a man, and I know how I can do it, and I know how, and I can probably teach Kenrick how to do a particular technique, because he's shouldery. But when I was teaching footwork to women, I remember Molly, she struggled with it, and she worked hard at it, and she worked hard at it, and she worked hard at it, and then when she figured it out, she was like, well, the way I'm doing it isn't actually the way Warwick taught me. I'm doing it the way I need to do it. I took his lessons and I turned them into things that would work for me. And so now when female students come to me and they want more advanced footwork lessons, I just send them a Molly, mm-hmm. Right? Like, why would I mean, I can try, I can give you the fundamentals and stuff, but if we're going to take you to that next level, I'm going to send you to somebody that can actually take you there.
Mm-hmm. That actually happened to me. You did actually send me to Molly, and Molly has given me awesome tips between Molly and Alessandra, and I also just bounce up to people and ask them for advice a lot. So I feel like a lot of things you're talking about, I've received some of the benefits of these discussions, because I really have had people come up to me and be like, so female physiology, these things. And I've had people explain right from pretty early on in my Rapier journey, the adrenaline is going to be different and the emotions might be like different. So I think being really new, I've noticed that like those discussions actually do get put in, but yeah, like, you do notice when you join the SCA is that there aren't a whole lot of female fighters. There just aren't. And I remember at my first ever big event, it was a Daffodil. And I was watching the heavy fighters, and I was talking to just I don't remember who it was, but she was sitting on the sidelines and knitting, and I was like, I'm so surprised that like there aren't more female fighters here. And she sort of laughed and went, I'm not, who would want to get hit like that? I was just like, me? I would.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not heavy, but just because I was more interested in the swords than the armor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's called, you know, the leaky pipe, this idea that people come in and they're interested, and yet somehow along the way we lose them. They become disenchantized, or they just they lose their inspiration, and that's a big problem. And one of the things we talked about when we had the heavy combat is how to structure heavy fighting practices so that they are supportive of people, if they're, you know, if it's gender minority or if it's women, like how do we structure it so that people feel welcome the entire time, and keep coming back. And that's I think that's something. Sorry, it's related to the baby that was just here. So yeah, I don't think there's any. I think a lot of them is not easy answers, but I think there are concrete things we can do. I think there's some things that we're not doing, and I think that's really worth figuring out how we can, in every space, if we can make every shire and barony more welcoming at fighter practices and get people out, and that, you know, that'll address some of it. Yes, Warwick.
Also, we have to recognize within a barony like LionsGate how privileged we are to have a practice that can have 30 people show up to it,
Yeah.
and 4 of them are women, right? Like, or 5 or 3 or whatever. But the fact that we have women coming to a practice that can sometimes have 30 people, where there'll be 6 senior marshals and 4 mods. I mean, like, how lucky are we to have that? How fortunate we are. And then you go, and you have to remember that when you go to some of the smaller shires, some of these smaller things, where they're lucky if they have 3 people show up to a practice. And you've got 1 woman, you've got 2 heavy fighters, and maybe 1 other rapier fighter, and that's it. Like, that's what they got, and you just got to work with what you got. Like, that is a tough place to be as a new fighter, trying to, you know, that's leaky pipe all over the place right there, because it's not going to work between those 2 people. It's just done.
Is there a document that kind of lays out some of the ways to make those fighting spaces more friendly?
No, the only document that I've seen was the one that I forget a knight had come up with 10 things that you can do at your practice.
Sir Rifkin.
That's the only thing I've seen. Other than that, I think it's kind of up to whoever's running the practice to invest in themselves and their ability to coach. Yeah.
Guido, you have a question?
It's really difficult to actually do something like that, simply because so many practices aren't actually run by anyone. There's sort of a loose conglomeration of people who show up and do what they do without any sort of real structure or anybody, I don't want to say in charge, but sort of guiding the basic concepts. If you don't have that, then that's how it's going to work. You're going to have problems. And I'm a big proponent of a structured practice, always have been, always will be, but most places just aren't. And I think
it takes a lot of work to do that, to have a structured practice, right?
It's not easy. It is not easy at all. You have to have a committed core of people who are going to show up on a regular basis to create a structured practice.
I was really when I started out, because we had structured practices, and Ramsgard has had a long history of structured practices, and that's what allowed for a lot of the successful fighters in the past to come out of here in armor combat. And at the time, it was actually Alessandra who was running the practices here in Ramsgard. And I think when I showed up, there was about 3 other girls who had shown up who were also fighting rapier. So I was kind of lucky that I had that exposure early on, but I think I'm the only one who stuck with rapier after that. And then the other person moved to armored combat. The other woman moved to armored combat.
Speaking of Alessandra, I actually see she has her hand up. I'm not sure if it's the same Alessandra.
It is.
Okay, please come and join us. Can I find you to spotlight you just a second? How do I?
I don't have my camera on. I'm not.
Okay.
So it's all good. Thank you though. I wanted to add on to, you kind of have trailed off, but kind of the question about what people can do to help make it a little bit better for females progressing and making it easier. One thing that I've noticed, everybody's comments were absolutely fabulous. One thing I've noticed as a female fighter is that when I try to impart knowledge, or when I have a student, say Gizela, and we are working on something, it's not uncommon for a male fighter to come and tell me how to teach better, and or to tell Gizela what to work on over what we are already currently working on. And that's them trying to impart knowledge. The intent is very good. A lot of people want to help. Somebody else mentioned that earlier. But I think that from a female perspective, it seems like you're kind of doing that head pat thing that somebody else mentioned. Like, that's nice, that's kind of cute. Let me show her what to do, or let me show your student what to do. I think taking a step back, checking the ego, whether it's intentional or not, and understanding that some teachers are working with specific things with their students is crucial to helping our Rapier community grow forward and allow other people, specifically female fighters, to excel at what they're trying to do, or to show that they are capable at what they're trying to do. Because I do absolutely know the intent was good, but it definitely felt like kind of being brushed under the rug. Like, well, what you're showing her doesn't really matter right now. I'm going to show her this. And it was totally kind of polar opposite of what we were trying to focus on at that point in time.
That gives me a sad. I hope it wasn't me.
It was not you. No. It was not anybody here. Everybody in LionsGate, I've seen some of the chats going back. The Rapier practice is phenomenal. It is very structured. People point other people to women, to men, to whomever, if they know that they excel at that point, right? Like Molly with footwork, or Guido with sword drills. Everybody has their kind of niche, and in LionsGate, I think we're very privileged that you can point them to one person or another that has that little improvement over maybe somebody else. But in general, it does kind of come across like, oh, that's cute that you're trying to teach.
I've always been a big fan of the best way for somebody to learn something is for them to turn around and teach it. So I love the idea of women teaching as much as they possibly can, because it's the best way they're going to actually understand. It's easy enough to learn how to do something, but to teach it is to have to understand it and understand why you do it. So I love the idea of more women actually getting into these teaching roles and becoming more leaders in the community and being more active. That's something that we really need if we're going to keep a retention of any gender minority. We have to actually be that inclusive so that they can move on and teach and grow the community that way.
Oh, sorry, Savia, please go ahead.
Okay, I was actually talking with some friends a while ago about teaching, and their philosophy is, for you to teach somebody something, you just have to know a little bit more than they do. You don't have to be an expert, you just have to be able to lead them down a path a little bit further.
And be willing to work with them, right? Yeah. When I took on the Master of Blades for LionsGate, just anecdotally, I did it for a couple of years. My game at the end of that stint, because I was running organized practices, and so like I felt the pressure to like give a lesson every week. My fight was so much better at the end of that. Like, it just went through the roof, right?
I just have a comment here from Molly, and I feel this so much in my professional life, which is it's hard to teach people who won't listen to you just because you're female, and it's very true. It's very frustrating.
I've definitely run into that a few times.
Yeah.
Where
they're just waiting for you to stop talking, and you're like, oh.
You can see it glaze over the face.
You can see it. It sucks.
It does, yeah.
I recommend headbutts.
Yeah, a good punch to the face. So that's
Throat.
Unless they're wearing a
that way they can't talk anymore.
So just moving on for a second, I'm curious, what is a big challenge you faced in your Rapier career, or heavy cut and thrust, and how did you overcome it? Is that something that maybe Guido or Savia, or what are some of the things that you've come across that you had to figure out how to get around?
I make no secret of the fact that I actually have a vision impairment. I can't see objects in motion. I have serious issues with depth perception. So a lot of people say, well, how can you fence that? Like, how the hell do you do it? And I joke around and say I fight by braille. For God's sakes, don't let me touch your sword, because then I know everything I need to know. I know exactly where you are, which is sadly somewhat true. But also the fact that if you have this particular condition and you've had it your entire life, you don't know what it's like not to have it. You've just adapted. So people say, well, how can you tell what's going on? I mean, you can't tell depth. It's like, yeah, but I can see their shoulders and their hips and their feet, and that tells me everything I need to know, so we're good. But for a while there, figuring out range, especially going from epées, which are quite short, to standard SCA weapons now, which are 42 inches long, the extra range caused serious issues, and now 46-inch long rapiers are becoming popular, so I'm having to reteach myself range again because swords are getting longer again. So that was a major issue for me. And then, of course, getting old and having injuries after injury after injury after injury, but that's a separate issue.
Something for me was actually when I returned to the SCA, I returned with a diagnosis of lupus, which comes with chronic fatigue and arthritic type symptoms. So I just can't, I don't move. I wouldn't say I don't move the same, but it's definitely with a lot more effort. And I had to retrain myself to understand that my capacity, even though I'm giving 100% in what I do, is not the same 100% that it once was. And that's more of, I think, a mental hurdle to get over, and more of an ego-based hurdle to get over. And just, yeah, I just had to retrain my thinking on how I approach fighting, and learning how to tell myself it's okay to stop now. I don't have to be the last one on the field. My body is telling me no, and I would like to fight tomorrow as well. That would be probably my biggest hurdle to get over, and I'm still working on it. That's a long lesson to learn.
I had one more question on gender. It's, which is, as I know from personal experience, the rapier community has a very personal relationship with the queen. How would a same-gendered consort change that, if at all?
Wouldn't change anything for me whatsoever.
Would it change the name of the Kingdom Championship?
I believe I think that there's been a lot of sort of push to change it to Kingdom Rapier Champion away from Queen's Rapier Champion. I don't know. That's a question for somebody who deals with that sort of thing. So the Kingdom Marshal or somebody in that position. I think it should for that reign at least, but I would have no problem with changing it to Consort's Rapier Champion. I have no issue with that whatsoever.
My persona is English, and so I'm a big fan of the whole cult of Gloriana type of thing. And so when the whole mod thing was happening and we were writing ceremonies for elevating people, that was a part of many of those ceremonies, was that whole idea of being the Queen's man. And I don't think that would have to change with a same-sex consort. Same-sex consort. I mean, you, as Guido said, you could call it Consort's Rapier Champion for that one time. I don't think it would change anything for me, at least.
Little known fun fact, the livery collar as a chain was originally conceived as an idea because we were in chained fealty to the Queen.
I love the concentration on the consort, to be honest with you. It really drives home a direct link with the crown as one half of the crown to the community, and I think to do anything to put that in jeopardy or to decrease it would be a shame. It's a really important part of our culture, and I love my time being queen and the connection it gave me with your community. So yeah, I'm sure there's many ways to do it, but I was just curious of the question. We haven't had that in Antir yet, but I'm sure we will.
Sure, we could do it respectfully. This says Queen's man in Latin.
Oh.
Yeah.
One of you asked a while ago about special moments in the SCA. This dates back quite a long time, but one of the moments I found very interesting. At one point, the Crown decided we were no longer going to be the Queen's Rapier Champion. We're going to be the Kingdom Rapier Champion. And as a community, we felt that as a little bit of a slap in the face. We were not so happy about that. And then at 1/12 night, the queen at the time, Ariana Silkenfire, stood up and said, this is now the Queen's Rapier Championship. This queen is taking back her champion in front of the entire assembled group. That was a really big moment for us. So we thought that was very special.
Mm-hmm. And I think that moment has trickled down in our culture and is still alive. Yeah.
So Guido, do you remember when Savric came to us as White Scarves with and he was talking about the formation of the order, and he wanted to know if we wanted to be the Queen's Order, if that was our desire, that we continue that idea. And I believe it was pretty much unanimous that across the board, the White Scarves present were like, absolutely, that's who we are.
That's wonderful.
Interesting.
Well, I do have a question about the White Scarf Order. Do you feel it should be restored, or do you feel it's fine the way it is? I'm curious. How about Gizela? I'm curious in your thoughts.
Gosh, I mean, there were mods when I joined, so I feel like I don't really have a specific feeling on that. It's hard to say because I've heard so many people with so many different takes on this, and I wasn't there. So
I do find the loudest voices tend to be people who already have theirs. So I'd love to make some space for people that don't, and their opinions as well.
I think it would be messy to reopen it now.
Yeah.
And I'd be lying if there's a tiny little part of me that said I didn't want to be a White Scarf still, because that was it. That was the pinnacle when I joined.
Yeah.
I had my heart set on that, and then I left and I came back, and everything is the way it is now. But my goals for mod and all of that haven't changed. They just shifted slightly. I think it might be beneficial to have a grant level award for Rapier recognition if there isn't already, so that there's something in between. That's not a part of an order, but just an award. I think that might be useful to the community, though.
Would it come with the title Dawn, though?
No, I think that would be rather disrespectful.
Guido?
So I'm going to say the controversial and horrible thing here. First, there is actually a grant for Rapier combat. It's a grant for combat in general. So we have that. Secondly, I don't think we should open the Order of the White Scarf. I think it would be a bad idea, simply because those that already have it and those who get it now would be two entirely different sort of ideas. The ones who had it previously were at the, like Savia said, at the pinnacle of their career. They were at the top. Now it would be a mid-level award. So you'd have White Scarf and White Scarf Light, which I don't think would be fair to the people being brought in or to the people already in. So I don't think it's a good idea to reopen the order. I think it is what it is.
Warwick, you haven't weighed in yet.
Yeah, Gizela's got her hand up, though. I'd like to hear what she has to say.
Just that brought up a point, like I would feel really awkward, like if I as like in a few years got this mid-tier award and it was a White Scarf, would feel really weird because some of my first teachers were White Scarves. That just, it feels like it's, yeah, like that pinnacle. And yeah, so that would be very strange and uncomfortable. Just, yeah, I don't really have a specific argument here so much as just gut feeling, because again, like this, yeah, kind of predates me.
Like the shark's been jumped is
I think if people still wanted White Scarf, they shouldn't have closed the order. It should have stayed open.
I guess what I'm curious about is does the Rapier community feel at the time it was closed, did you have sufficient input? Or was it just Warwick? What's your take?
So, I mean, they asked the White Scarves if we should close the order, and we said yes.
Okay.
I agree with Guido. I've said the same words, that it would, if you started giving out White Scarves afterwards, they would be considered a different type of White Scarf, perhaps a lesser White Scarf, and that would do a disservice to those people. But I know where the question, I understand where the question comes from, because when I took Stefan as my scholar, he didn't want a collar. He wanted a scarf,
Mhm.
right? He wanted a cadet scarf. And so I gave him a cadet scarf for 1 year, and then I gave him a collar. And the reason he wanted it was because he's been around long enough that there's a certain romance
There is.
in conjunction with the scarf, with the white scarf. I mean, Molly made this for me. It's beautiful, right? I think she might have created the thread with her own body. I'm not sure, but but there's definitely a romance associated with the scarf. I mean, when you see pictures of Drake, he's got a white scarf on. Like, it's got a ton of history associated with it, right? And now that's gone, and there are people who won't get to have that, and that makes me sad.
So a fun historical documented fact here, the use of a red scarf on the left arm has only been historically documented as one thing, and that's a prostitute in Elizabethan England.
Oh, shush you.
Appropriate.
It burst in our bubbles.
Yeah. That's funny. No, I think there's definitely a strong like emotional attachment for people who are around for the Order of the White Scarf before the Order of Defense to the scarves and to the order and the title and everything like that. And I don't really think that'll go away for most people. But I think it's good where it's at.
The ship has sailed, right? Some other kingdoms have kept it open.
Yeah.
But because we've closed it, I think the book is shelved.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think, but I also think it's interesting. Sometimes in the SCA and in life, we think things can be easily replaced. Like we had this thing, and now we're gonna like Clinton falls into that, where it was gonna be really easily replaced by this other thing, and it turns out that recreating something is not easy. And I wonder about the gulf between the white scarf and the sable gauntlet. But maybe the question is if there is, is it worth evolving a new grant level award for the rapier and cut and thrust community?
I think it would be nice. I honestly do. I think part of one of the things that I talk about too, bringing this a little bit back to gender, because that's my niche, is recognition, more opportunities for recognition. And if that means creating a new award to put names on the table and to help people move forward, if there's more steps in between a long-term goal, it's easier to achieve because you have more mile markers.
Yeah,
I don't know, for
absolutely.
me, mod seems like it's really far away, if that makes sense. I think white scarf in some ways felt closer in attainability for some reason. I don't know if it was just because it was bigger or because I knew more white scarves than, I don't know what that's from, but kind of feels that way. So
We have precedent. We have grant level service awards. We have grant level arts and science awards.
Mhm.
There's certainly that path is there. It'd be quite simple to replicate that, and nobody would be surprised by it.
Mhm.
Mm.
Well, and the community is changing too, so I think there's a good opportunity for it at this point.
I remember when the Principality started, the Principality actually had sort of a Rapier award. They had an Armored Combat Award, a Rapier Award, an Arts and Sciences Award. But unfortunately, the Armored Combat, the Archery, and the Rapier Award got mashed together for heraldic reasons into the Havoc. And I've always found that sort of unfortunate. I thought having a separate Rapier Award was actually a good thing to have.
Mhm.
So the award was only ever given out once, and then Kingdom Herald say, yeah, you can't have that. That's not allowed, and that's not allowed, and that's not allowed. It's like, oh well, we're just make them all Havocs. There we go. We're good.
Okay, I just saw something in the chat mentioning that the Sable Gauntlet is on the same level as the Order of the White Scarf, and technically, yes, it is, but I would disagree strongly. When I started the SCA, White Scarves were equivalent to Knights, and that's how they were described to me. So technically, yes, they are, but no, they are not the same award.
And that's why I put in the second part of it that if you reestablished it, it would be.
Yeah.
I mean, I was around when white scarves were the thing and for rapier tournament or rapier combat. And I agree, it is not what the Sable Gauntlet is now.
Yeah.
But if you reestablish the white scarf, that's what it would be, is the same as the Sable Gauntlet. And that's all I was saying.
Oh, okay.
The white scarf was the white scarf, what it was, is not what the sable gauntlet is now. But
Yeah.
if we established the white scarf, that's what it would drop it down.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
I guess I just see the white scarf, and I was my partner at the time, Don Pierce, became a white scarf when we were together, and watching him through his journey at that last bit, the feeling is very different than in the heavy fighting community, because there's more of an arts and science component to rapier. There's more of an appreciation of period movement, of looking a certain way, of carrying yourself a certain way, that isn't captured in a grant level award for all martialettes. So maybe I think it would be interesting to talk about
I think
a grant level that was rapier, that more encapsulated what makes rapier and cut and thrust so unique, and the community so unique.
totally. I think there's an opportunity for a variety of different rapier types awards for a variety of different things. Because there's lots of things we do. We like to look good on the field. Some of us like period techniques more than others. You know, there's a lot. Sorry.
I, for one, am a fan of any award that promotes historically accurate combat. So I'm just out there.
I'm shocked to hear you say that, Vito. I'm not shocked at all. One of the last questions I had for you guys is, what advice do you have for somebody who's starting out, who's watching this for the first time, who's looking forward to their first rapier their rapier practice, whenever those start up again? What advice do you guys all have? Maybe Gizela, do you have any? Because you're as the newest member of the panel, what are your thoughts?
I think you learn a lot if you're not too afraid to ask people for advice, because at first I was pretty timid, but then I realized that, mods don't bite much. So you can go up to them and ask things. I mean, I try to be polite about it. I hope I haven't overstepped any boundaries, but in general, people have been very helpful to explain things when you ask stuff. And even I think a friendly attitude really helps, and to just put a smile on even if you're scared.
Sorry, I just interrupt. I just noticed that Draven has his hand up, and I apologize. I'm not sure how long you've had your hand up. Draven, did you want to leap in now with a question or comment?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It was actually in the last question with respect to the Order of the White Scarf and such.
Okay.
It'll probably be an unpopular opinion, but you know what? That's been my whole history in the STA in that regard. I don't think it should be reopened as a member of the Order of the White Scarf, but I think it's something that could happen. For people that can say that it can't happen, yeah, I mean, it's definitely kings and queens that may decide that ultimately in the end. But here's the thing: you had a number of leaders that were the pinnacle of leadership in terms of the rapier community, and regardless of, I wouldn't even say it's a stripping of anything. It's just, I think for myself, when that whole decision went down, because I recall that Warwick and Maestro Warwick and Guido are correct. We were polled, we were asked on that, by the king and queen at that time and such, that whole transition. But I mean, I look at what Avakel did, and Avakel, what they did is they kept the Order of the White Scarf in there still for I think about a year during that transition, because they recognized that the leadership is there. When you switch leadership, it's not like it was a very awkward kind of transition, and there was really no way. I mean, the leaders that stayed, I mean, my hat's off to you, and that's Warwick and Guido, the people here that are putting themselves out here. They totally did that. I mean, for me at that time, and it actually wasn't even a reason that I left, was that transition for about 4 or 5 years, as Savia had mentioned. We just happened to be leaving around that time, and that transition had occurred. But I knew that was going to be a big thing. No, could it still happen? Absolutely. I mean, no, order could happen. I mean, if it was, then I think that would encourage people, because here's the thing that I see is that the order was, to me anyway, was about people that had a lot of skill with rapier. That was it. We did try to do the other stuff, and certain members definitely did it in terms of historical combat and other areas in terms of how they dressed and everything. Their kit looked awesome, but it was about kicking butt, and the other aspects were great too. And I think that still has a place within the SCA. Could it happen? Could that encourage more people? Like, we all talk about retention, we all talk about these other things. No, and I laugh at people that just say that the Order of the White Scarf was just a grant level award. Yeah, you put it down to it, but technically yes. But for the people in the order and the people that strove for it and the people that didn't make it in, I wouldn't call it that. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Draven.
That sounds like an excellent job for the Order of the Rose and the Order of the Valorous Estate, which is like a secret society that helps make everything run. And that if there were royals that were like, I think it would be great to open up the White Scarf Order, we could be like, is that really what's best? Or to try and maybe slow the roll a bit.
Well, so just to play devil's advocate, I could totally see it happening.
Yeah.
Like,
it could very much happen.
It would, but it would have to be extremely, it would have to be meticulously planned out, communicated, right? And there would be so many pitfalls and potential potholes that could derail it. It would just have to be, it would be such a delicate operation.
Yeah.
Right? I can see it happening under the right circumstances. Oh, there's a blood moon tonight, I think. I don't know, maybe. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it would take the right people and the right and I think you would actually even have to potentially even poll to see if you would have enough support for something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
And you would have to have a plan. Like, what about the people who were close when it was closed, as versus the people that are close to being a mod now? Like, you would have, there would be a lot of that sorry, Guido.
When the decision was made to close the Order of the White Scarf because we were creating the Masters of Defense, it was very much a, do we pull the Band-Aid off slowly or do we just rip it off?
Yeah.
And the decision was made, we're just going to rip that Band-Aid off.
Yep.
Because we thought that the slow process might cause more problems than it was really worth. We thought we just close the order, we just end it right now. Was it the right decision? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. We can't go back in time and redo it to see if, did we make a mistake there? But the fact is, that's what we chose, that's what we did. And we just sort of kind of made our bed and just lie in it now. Is this how it's working? It's starting to work itself out now. Things are starting to get better. People are starting to sort of understand the sort of new dynamic and how it works. And it's getting better. Is it perfect yet? Not even close. But it's getting better. Slowly. Too slowly, but slowly. So I think opening the Order of the White Scarf would be a mistake because it would throw that Band-Aid, it'd be putting a Band-Aid back on the damaged wound and saying, maybe we're gonna have to rip that off again. So be ready.
Okay, fair enough. Your Excellency, Gemma?
So, Your Grace, as a companion of the Valorous Estate, I sit in those meetings with you, so I'm speaking as a royal peer on this one.
Yeah.
I don't think you can open the Order of the White Scarf again. I think you have to create something entirely new and separate. And there's kingdoms that have the tri-level award system, and that's something that Ontario is starting to implement. And as a White Scarf, I would hate to see that order reopened and just suddenly start including new members into something that was closed, and that the members of the Rapier community who are White Scarves, we've had our time to put our minds to that and to wrap our hearts around that. And there is an emotional connection to my queen for giving me that scarf. And I think that as a royal peer, we need to be aware that there could be a devaluing of that link between that monarch and that Don or Danya. And we really don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I got my pelican from you.
I remember that was my favorite, I think, peerage I ever did.
And having that connection between you and I as the crown that elevated me to that, and knowing that I will always have that connection to Duchess Dagmar, I would be crushed if someone came along and said, there's no value in that to you anymore because we're going to add 50 other people into this order. But if they created something new and completely autonomous and unique, those members of the Order of the White Scarf should be able to be behind that and say, we support this 100% and welcome. There is room for you and there is inclusion here and there's always room for more, and please support your female fighters and get them in there as well.
Well, I think it would take a set of royals who wanted very much to include the rapier community in creating something new. I think people have buy-in when they feel included.
I think you
and
know
not
a
have
guy.
something thrust on them.
I think you know a guy.
I think I know a guy.
Do you know a guy?
Stick guy.
You know a
Oh,
guy?
you mean the guy downstairs dealing with children? Yeah.
Yeah, you might know a guy who could make the thing with the thing and the do-do-do.
I would be very interested in yeah, well, I mean, who knows what happens in life, but yeah, that would be awesome for sure. Does anyone have anything they want to add, or should we throw it up to questions?
I want to answer actually the question that you last left off on, which was advice for people who are new and starting out, I think.
Yes.
The first and best piece of advice I ever got was learn the White Scarves names. So learn White Scarves names and learn the mod names, because you will get priority if you can call their name out across the list field. Works like a charm. I don't know how many people I've been like,
you.
White Scarf so-and-so, Master so-and-so, and they have no clue who I am. I've never met them before, but I was able to call their name out because I learned it beforehand from people who brought me to the event or people that I knew, and they said, you should learn from this person. So learn people's names, try not to be too scared to call out to them and ask for help or advice or whatever it is.
That's pretty much what my advice was. My answer to that question was literally going to be go fight mods, go fight White Scarves, go talk to them, like just go be there with them, and just like cross blades with them.
Right. And if you're nervous, if you're anxious, find somebody, make a friend with somebody who isn't nervous and anxious, who can drag you to those people and be like, and make the introduction for you. If you have a support person, they will help you. So.
How important is looking good to the journey?
Oh, it's so important.
Okay.
Oh,
why don't we just make that on? Yeah.
I mean, somebody posted a thing and they wanted people to find pictures of themselves in their original kits, and they posted them. And so I started looking back, and I was like, no, I'm not posting that. It's so bad, so bad.
I believe I just burned all mine and then went through the internet and scrubbed everything that even remotely looked like it might have been one.
I had velour pants.
No.
Oh boy.
I wore them for years.
How many of you did the crushed velvet French outfits? No.
Nope.
No crushed velvet French outfits.
Never went that far.
All the lace and the poofy sleeves and the slashes all over.
How do you not get heat stroke in that?
Oh,
What about your advice for somebody who was interested in cut and thrust? Do you suggest that they start with rapier, or do you think?
No.
Oh.
So we had a discussion about this. It was an interesting discussion, and I totally agree with his point of view. So the rapier is one of the hardest weapons to learn how to use properly. It's in most period manuals, it's the last one they teach because it's the most difficult. And you progress through different weapons forms.
It's the weight of a longsword, and you're using it in one hand.
Yeah. So learning other sword forms ultimately help you with rapier, with timing, with range, with all these different problems like line and control and all these things. So learning other sword forms will ultimately help your rapier combat. It's funny how in the SCA, in rapier combat, people come in and they want to fight rapier, and a lot of them want to do rapier first and then look at cut. It's like, well, you're going backwards. You're fighting with the most complex weapon and then going to something easier. I can teach somebody how to fight with a messer in literally one afternoon. It's such a simple weapon to use.
The only trouble with, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
The only trouble with that is making sure that you're in an area where you have a practice where there's a cut and thrust martial, because that's
That's always
There's
the
just
challenge,
fewer
right?
of you out there, so.
It's also expensive. The price can be prohibitive at times. I freely admit that rapier combat is not a cheap hobby. The blades are expensive, the hilts are expensive, the masks are expensive. Everything about it is expensive. It's a sad fact of life. But I have spare gear in everything I have. I have 2 long swords. I have 2 side swords. I only have 1 messer, so you're sort of screwed there. I have multiple rapiers. I am more than happy to put one in someone's hand and help them out. We have spare mats. We have spare gear. I am happy to lend stuff out.
I find too, I think, especially like specifically longsword, because most of my HEMA friends are longsword people, with longsword and HEMA becoming much more popular, I think there's more accessibility to more affordable equipment to train with, maybe not to do tournaments in, but to train with. You have more access to more affordable options with cut and thrust, just because it's becoming more popular even outside the SCA.
That's one of the advantages we have, because we have the nylon blades out there, which are fairly affordable and don't break as easily as some of the steel blades do. And great, they're fine for training with, or even a wooden waster, fine for training with and getting the basics. And some of the swords they even use for combat, some of the super light feathers, they're fine for training with. I wouldn't use one in an actual SCA tournament because my longsword would blow through a feather, most feathers. But they're fine for training with. And those are, for the most part, those are very reasonably priced. So training equipment can be reasonable. It's the actual combat gear that can get pricey.
Yeah.
Interesting interkingdom anthropology. We discussed this earlier. So when I talk to mods from out east, and a lot of them talk about how they, before people can get authorized in cut and thrust, they have to be authorized in rapier. And I'm like, that's insane. Why would you do that? I don't understand. Cut and thrust is much simpler. It's doing tempo, and rapiers are single tempo, and I don't understand. And what I realized was the difference is they do cut and thrust with rapiers, and so in that regard, they've got people throwing percussive cuts with rapiers, and so they're right. You probably want them to authorize in rapier before they start doing cut and thrust. Whereas out here, when we do cut and thrust, we put the rapiers aside and we bring out a backsword or a longsword, which actually is a simpler weapon and easier to learn. You can teach somebody to do Dewey tempo attacks. It's a parry riposte with a backsword. They think they're Errol Flynn in about an hour and a half. They're having a blast, right? But when we start them in rapier, we're like, well, we're going to do 2 hours of footwork. It's
a slower progression with rapier. It can be kind of boring for people.
It doesn't start out the same way, really.
No. Also, I learned a lot of footwork actually when I started learning more about longsword and cut and thrust stuff, because I fight fairly linearly, and trying to fight more in around longsword footwork is really helpful for that. So
if I'm just starting out, what equipment do I need? How do I start? I'm watching this. I think it's sounding great. Where do I go?
I advise people to show up to practice. Most practices have loaner equipment. You want to make sure it's something you're going to enjoy before you start spending hundreds of dollars.
Bring your own groin protection.
Yeah, bring your own groin.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about that for some reason.
Most practices though, they'll have what they need to get you armored up. Figure out if you like it before you start spending lots of money.
Guido?
Honestly, yeah, exactly what I was saying. Go to the practice. They generally have loaner gear that you can practice with. And before you buy anything, talk to people.
Yeah.
Talk to people who have bought stuff. The worst thing you can do is to show up at a practice having bought a sword online and walk in with something we like to call a McSword, which probably wouldn't last you a year if you're lucky.
Or a sharp. We've had people show up with sharp.
Yeah, a sharp. We've had that happen.
What's a sharp?
A sharp sword.
Like a oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when you go to that practice and you think you're in a position where you want to buy a mask, you want to buy a sword, you want to buy gloves. Gloves are relatively simple, but certainly for a mask and swords, talk to people, say, what should I get? And tell them what your budget is. Be completely honest. Say, I can't spend more than this on a mask. Okay, well, this is what you can do. These work. Or say, I need a sword for this range. Okay, well, go here. They have swords in that range. Or so
we're pretty fortunate now with our hobbies being more popular, there are many more sword makers and there's a much wider variety, and I think price ranges now than there once was. So there's something to meet what you're looking for, new or used too.
Somebody asks, how much would it cost to get into your own basic kit?
Oh God, I know
You
the
know-
steel has started, but I'm not sure what it is, what it costs.
So I do.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can get a blue gauntlet for about $60.
Mhm.
You can buy a Castile entry-level rapier and dagger for about 300,
Mhm.
right? And that's pretty much. And then you just got to find yourself a gorget, and you can pick up one of those for under $100. So for about $300 American, you can get on the field.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You can do it for less if you have some patience, and some people have some used stuff. But there's a lot that's really hit or miss, because you see a lot of people are like, I need to buy a used sword. Well, nobody sells their swords. It just doesn't happen.
Also, you don't know how that sword's been fit.
That's true.
Buying a used sword is like buying a used car. Ideally, you're going to want to see it before you buy it, and ideally, you're going to want somebody who knows what they're looking at to see it before you buy it.
Yeah. And this is actually especially important for people who are of smaller stature, because some of these weapons, they can have different balances. They can have very large handles on them. And so if you've got a small hand, or you don't have a lot of upper body strength, and you pick yourself up a 3-pound rapier, you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a question from Koja. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Koja?
Hi, it's Koga.
Koga, sorry,
Oh, yeah.
Koga.
Well, just to add, it's the answer for new people. Let people know what you need, what you're looking for. That's a great way to go about it, because like you said, you can get a lot of used gear. People will, and even if you don't know what you're looking for, as long as people know, they can look over it and help you and let you know, oh, this ad, and they'll pass it to you, and this one's no good, this one is great. So that's a really helpful way to get started for cheap.
Mhm.
There's my 2 cents. Thanks.
I mean, we're very lucky here in LionsGate, because there's so many people, and we actually have an extensive steel key. I know, because I built it. And it's got a whole bunch of good kit in it, and other people have built upon it since then. But when you go to other places, smaller places, they may not have that luxury. And we have to keep I have to keep reminding myself of that.
Mhm.
There was a previous question that had to do with manuals, and the question is, how do the manuals relate to Fiore and Hofstetter and so forth? Are they the same type or different?
Oh, I think that was when they were talking about the translations and
Yeah, is it translations?
more readily.
Did you say Talhofer?
Yeah.
So that's a bit.
Hofstetter? Hofstetter, sorry, Hofstetter.
Okay, so those are medieval manuals.
Oh, okay. Marcus asked to the mods, I like to call you guys oods now, but mods, how do you feel this COVID break is going to impact this problem regarding evaluating new mods?
Everyone just holds their breath.
Well,
you're all
what?
Frozen. You're all frozen. Oh no.
We're all going to kind of suck a little when we get back on the field. So, maybe the field it'll be. I mean, we'll all have our fundamentals, but we're all going to be like older and maybe a little fatter. So.
I mean, no different in heavy. It's going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's going to be a hard reset, because it's not, but it's going to be difficult to have people that we were thinking very seriously of without having some time to see how they're doing now. It's just, I honestly think there's going to be like a short freeze while we kind of reassess what's going on and how things are working. And I'm just going to say this out there right now to all you rapier fighters out there. Pick your sword up every day starting now. You're already behind me. I pick my sword up every day. You're way behind me.
Yeah,
pick your sword up every day.
You just have to hold it. You just have to carry it around the house.
That thing has
Guido is disappointed in you.
Yeah.
So before you go to Molly, I just want to say this question has been asked at the society level by mods as well, and they're talking about going to those first practices and saying, okay, everybody, before you stab your friend, let's just move the sword around a little bit, and let's walk around, and maybe we'll like stab the wall a few times and get our measure down and stuff like that, right?
Yikes. We do have a question from Seamus, Molly, and Peregrina.
Just wanted to add with the coming back to practice thing, some of our physiques have changed in this COVID time, so you're going to have to learn how to move differently. And one thing I always tell new fighters that I think we could all remember is give yourself permission to suck for the first little while. It is going to be not fun, but it will be fun eventually.
I saw Guido once when you said that.
Well, that's because it's Monsignor Prosper. That's a Prosper quote. Ghosts of past. Oh yes.
I learned it from one of you guys, so.
I like to quote it.
So when I stopped and I came back to the SCA, I kind of dove head first, even though I hadn't been fighting very much, but there is still, I say I dove head first, and I think that most of that was travel. So I got acclimatized better, but I also had the benefit of everyone else already being acclimatized because they didn't take a break. But practice and holding your sword and just showing up, doing the drills, doing the footwork, the boring stuff. You're starting not necessarily from square one, but you're a few steps back.
Sorry.
Honestly, we probably have a couple of months now, so get to work. Get to practice. Like get your sword in your hand, start moving.
Yeah.
Get on with it.
One question I would have for you guys, and back, so events are back on, practices are back on, and I'm a rapier fighter from Ontario. I'm thinking about going to Gulf Wars. I'm thinking about going to Pennsic. Are there rule differences? Are there big cultural differences that I need to be aware of in terms of inter-kingdom stuff? What are some of the big ones?
Keep smiling, keep throwing.
Okay.
So this is the big one for me because I do a lot of traveling. And when you think they're being a dick, they're probably not. They've been trained differently than you. They have different cultural expectations in terms of how that fight is going to go. What you want to do is you want to walk up to that fighter that you're going to spar with, you're going to fight with, and you're going to say, hey, I'm from Ontario. Where are you from? Oh, Artemisia. Cool. Hey, we do tip cuts. Do you guys do tip cuts? Oh, okay, cool. Hey, if you leg me, I'm going to knee walk. So don't freak out, okay? And you have that conversation with them beforehand. I was in a melee and my opponent was over there and I kept tapping her in the wrist and she continued to look away from me and not take the wrist. And I thought, what? That's the most horrible rhino shit I could imagine. Nope, that's actually, if there's no actual eye contact, apparently in her culture, that's not actually a valid blow because she wasn't really engaged with me. I was too far away and the blow wasn't valid. And you'll find those things with mid-level fighters. They will happily game the rules all day. When you hit the high-level fighters, it all evens out and it doesn't make any difference anymore.
Seems similar to heavy stuff that I've heard. One question is, what is something that has started because of COVID that you wish would continue? For example, I love all the online classes that have started.
This stuff is great.
Yeah. I think as much as, we obviously talked a lot at events and you had that personal one-on-one time, I think that COVID has I think for me at least, it's kind of reminded me how much and why I love the SCA and what I miss about it. And just how many aspects of it that I actually took for granted as well. I'm a pretty introverted person, but the SCA was my social time. So, and I'm missing that. So I like these things. And I like that I have access to such a variety of topics being taught online. Because when I go to events and there's a tournament, I don't take any classes. I don't get the chance to learn ANS stuff or other things. But with the online stuff, I can, which I like that.
I would really like to see a lot of the online things that we're doing now stay. I think that'd be awesome. I mean, they don't have to be every week as they are now, maybe once a month, but I'd just really like to see them stay.
I've been enjoying the panel discussions. I've learned a lot.
I like the inter-kingdom stuff. Like this is great, this Barony, but there are people in this meeting right now that are from other kingdoms. I've seen them come in and come out and stuff, and I recognize some of the names because Lions Den has got a bit of a reputation now. But I'm participating in stuff that happens in Anstiora or or
Mhm.
Meridiers, right? And that's really cool. You learn a lot of stuff, and I've made a lot of new friends that I'm really looking forward to meeting in the flesh the next time I go to an Interkingdom event.
Mhm.
But it's been interesting too on that side, because we've been trying to get people from Drachenwald on the panels as well, but it's either 3 or 4 in the morning for them. So
Yeah.
there is still, it's
Yeah.
not even online. It's not perfect yet.
Yeah.
They're like, no, I'm asleep. I'm like, oh, fair enough.
Right. No, but I think the online stuff has made a lot of things in the SCA far more accessible, which is good. And I like that.
Conversation for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't been actually interacting with as many online things as maybe I could have been. So this has been the first panel I've participated in. But something that COVID has allowed me to do is sort of by taking that step back from the SEA and life in general, I guess, lets me rethink how I might want to approach learning and interacting in the future. So on a personal level, there's that time for reflection to realize, oh, well, I'm learning how I can learn better in the future when I am able to go out and do things again. And taking that time to just like really analyze, okay, how was I trying to learn before and how did it not work? And how can I implement the things I've learned moving forward? Yeah.
I totally get that. It kind of, yeah, COVID's, I don't know about others, but I know it's definitely forced me to reevaluate a lot of my value systems and things that I thought were important and things that I thought were working, and maybe look back and go, oh, that wasn't working as well as it could have, or it wasn't doing what I thought it was, or maybe it's not as important as I thought it was. So you get to be a little choosy going back, I think.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Anyone have any predictions on September Crown?
I see Seamus has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yep. Seamus, do you want to jump in there? Seamus,
Yeah, we're good. I was going to say something earlier in the conversation, move away, but it kind of just moved back. Is in our house, at least, one thing I've found is that the SCA, as much as we loved it, first thing COVID taught us is that it was taking up a lot of our energy and a lot of our time. And among everything else in a house where we personally really shut down, it was a real big change. And I think one of the things we're going to find coming out of this is that there are probably more people like us, where I've joked that there are spider webs on my sword, because things just changed so drastically that suddenly our habits and everything we worked towards and everything we were in a habit of doing stopped like that. And I mean, I'll admit to you, Guido, I haven't picked up the sword. You're way ahead of me, no doubt. But how many other people are going to be like that? And I think coming back into this, we also have to acknowledge that there are people that have just had their world turned upside down. And it's going to be tough for some of us to get back in. And so while the obvious stuff of, yeah, don't go shanking somebody at first time you're back at practice, you know, we definitely need to drill that stuff. But we also just need to say, hey, it's, you know, things have been really weird. And if this is something you loved, you know, if we've had time to reflect, and I've thought about, you know, my future in the SCA, and I'm working on trailer, you know, so there have been some benefits to this, but definitely going forward, it's going to be really different for some people based on personality type. And I hope we get a lot of those people back, and I hope people rekindle their love and stuff. I think we will. I intend to, you know, I'm here because I'm still interested, but yeah, we're not all the same.
I'm a lot less friendly.
Right, yeah. You know, people that thought they were massive extroverts have suddenly realized that, hey, you know, this is okay too. And now I'm actually just a little bit nervous being around people. So
I'm a toad now.
Yeah, lick me, I'm a toad. Anyways,
Don't lick me without permission.
That was my
I won't
thought.
like that.
I think it'll be good getting back when we get back, but you know, don't expect everybody just to pounce into this like already, like, yeah, finally. You know, some people are going to be just like weirded out, and we don't even have Sam in this conversation, so yeah, things will be different, right?
No, that's totally fair. I mean, the Lions Den started by I guess I was like, what can I do? I don't want to lose everybody. Like, I don't want to come back and have 10 people sitting in a room. I want to have 50 people. I want to have 100 people in the room. And how do we? And so, okay, let's do something. And it was going to be twice a month, and then it very quickly became once a week. But yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like, and I think starting slow.
Yeah.
I think there's been talk of like level of hug, like you can have a pin with like the level of hugs you're comfortable with or whatever, because there's going to be physical contact, and people are like, I don't.
As much as I'm a hugger, like everybody knows I like hugs. If you fought me on any field, you know that. But I'm not gonna lie, that's gonna be weird.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it's gonna be weird.
Strange.
Yeah, the huggers are gonna come out, and the other half are gonna be like, whoa, 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 whoa.
I think there's gonna be a lot more anxiety around, like, even if you are a hugger, it's kind of like, we've not been hugging people for so long, and it's been so frowned upon to be close to other people who aren't in your bubble for so long that I think it'll be weird for a lot of people.
I think 12th night has appeal because of that, because you can retreat into your room when you need to, and then you can like come out, and then that's appealing.
Yeah, right. You have a little hole that you can go back to.
12th night is really weird.
Little cave.
12th night's just one of the weirdest events we do already. It's like 2 days of court in a hotel. It's SCA Con. It's not one of my favorites.
I've had some good times though. And I mean, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely had some good times. I always feel weird, and maybe it's because I wear, late period English, and it's all layered and stuff, so I'm always too hot. So I just end up wearing a pair of black pants and a white billowy shirt, debauched poet style, and it's just, and everyone else looks amazing in their slash stuff, and it feels like a big con to me.
So you've mentioned a couple times that you do English. How did you go from doing the tartan, which I'm like this, to being English and it's like this?
So I was a fringe player, very, very much a fringe player.
Okay.
I only did Clinton, and I mostly just went there to party.
Right.
And then I started doing a little rapier on the side because they were a rapier household. So I started joining them doing the rapier practice. And then, and this is a lesson for all of us. If you want to take fringe players and you want to get them involved in the SCA, there's one thing you can do that will guarantee it, and that's you give them a job. And somebody gave me a job in the SCA. They asked me if I would be the master of blades for LionsGate. And I was like, sure, yeah, I'll do that. And that put me in a position where I started organizing classes, and I love melee, so I was teaching melee stuff. I was doing a bunch of reading, and then I got an AOA, and then I wanted better clothes because I was in court now, and it just sort of all steamrolled. And my persona is the same persona. It's always been English, right?
Okay.
It has. It just the kilt was easy. I could buy 9 meters of tartan for like $40 or something, right? So it was just a really simple thing. I didn't have any access to anyone that could sew.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anybody that could sew anything for me. So
As soon as I can.
So, and this, of course, I don't sew this. I just buy it. I have a costumer, same costumer as Guido. In fact, we've been using the same person for years.
So you mentioned about September Crown, whether that might be an option. We actually just talked about this at the Baronial Council, and we don't see any kingdom events until 12th night. Trudeau has mentioned that he doesn't want to open the border until Canada's at 75% vaccination.
75 at 1 dose, 75 at 2 dose.
I'm not sure what he said.
It was 75 1 dose, 65 2 dose, or 60% 2 dose.
So 60%
Whoa.
dose. So that's a long ways away. A whole
Interesting.
long ways.
Okay.
That's 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Wow, crazy.
We'll
I honestly
see,
don't
but that's I'm sorry, Guido, go ahead. Sorry, I stepped on you.
I honestly don't see anything till 12th night.
Yeah.
I think
if the border's not open, we can't have Kingdom, and we can't have Thierry Cornet either, because we can't have Thornwood come up, and we can't.
All I hope is that we get the ability to hold practices sometime soon. That's all I care about.
Practices are another thing. Yeah, practices and some small local events
outside.
Yeah, but but Kingdom, not for a long time.
Honestly, even if they did
That's
open it
helpful.
up, Kiva, I wouldn't go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure you're right. I think, yeah, I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking 12th night, and I'll be happy to get 12th night. I'm sure you're right.
I mean, Ulf was watching the PGA, right?
He
Did you
is.
see all the crowd watching
Yeah.
the finals?
Yeah,
All shoulder to shoulder, crammed together, no masks.
yeah, it's noticeable. Yeah.
And this is on TV. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, going into a hotel with a bunch of people that I don't know, whether
Mhm.
they've been vaccinated, whether they're anti-vaxxers, why would I do that? Why would I expose myself? Even if I've had both vaccines, I know somebody who's had one dose. He's an SCA'er, he's been vaccinated and then got COVID,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? Because you know that can happen. And of course, he's sick. He's not terribly sick, but he's sick, but he can get other people sick. He can't go see his parents.
Yeah.
You know, he's got a young child that's not vaccinated. And you know, there's just too many unknowns at this point. Everybody gets 2 jabs into them, and then a year later we'll talk.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sounds like we moved into the general discussion area rather than the Rapier talk.
I think so.
Yeah.
Is there anyone on the panel that there's something that wasn't covered that you wanted to cover? Is there anything that you felt that got glossed over, or?
No.
Okay.
I'm good. I think we covered everything.
We covered quite a bit. You guys were amazing.
Thank you.
I would like to say thank you very much, Kiva, for volunteering to help us out here. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Of course, anytime.
You made it 100% better, I'm sure.
Aw, charmer.
We just got a bunch of nerds talking over top of each other without this.
Actually, I think you've all been excellent. Why don't we see if we open it up? Does anyone else want to unmute themselves and ask a question or put it in the chat? Does anyone feel they wanted to ask something or get clarification on anything?
I just want to quickly say, while I have the chance, thank you very much, Warwick, Savia, and Gizela for sort of coming into this, even though it was my idea and it sort of morphed into something different as time went on. You still stuck with it. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Actually, I do have one last question for the panel, which is it worth having a pure cut and thrust panel or a talk or anything?
It depends how much you want to hear me talk.
I can talk cut and thrust all night if you want.
It doesn't actually answer my question, smooth as it is.
I think it might be worth it.
Yeah.
Someone who's not really fully in the cut and thrust community, and hasn't, like, I don't have an authorization and I have like half of the gear that I might need to do cut and thrust in the SCA, I think it might be worth it.
Okay.
I have some opinions.
I definitely have opinions.
Opinions, yeah. Okay. Why don't we? It'll probably be in the fall. Is that still of appeal? Okay, probably be September, October. Okay. That is my that puts a lid on my questions. So at the end of the panels, usually it just becomes more social space. And somebody says cut and thrust panel. I'd be in favor of it as a way of continuing to encourage the growth of the sport. If LionsGate feels they have the space and their agenda to do so, yeah. So it sounds like there's some support from the audience.
That's the Kingdom Earl Marshal giving us the thumbs up.
Oh.
So.
That's good. Okay, maybe we can. I mean, it might be interesting. Is it possible to do any like demoing of gear? It's kind of hard to do martial activities online or on a panel.
So I gave a class, and in Zoom, it can be very challenging with the small things.
We could probably get together with somebody and do a video of certain things and then present that.
Yeah. I think that would be great because it's a little bit abstract what the difference is. Yeah, that would be good.
I have somebody in mind that I could probably get together with and do a video showing the difference between cut thrust and rapier combat as an idea.
I find it really interesting what you were saying about the finals of the Queen's Rapier Championship, where if you're both authorized for cut and thrust, you can actually shift the finals into cut and thrust. Like that's really interesting. I didn't know that.
I mean, there's nothing stopping people from doing that in any bout. If you're both
And
Oh,
I know the last time I fought in Queen's Rapier Championship, if I had made the finals, I would have asked my opponent if he wanted to do a cut and thrust fight. That was
that
my
would have
plan.
been awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty cool. I mean, hell, you know, sometimes when Guido and I fight, it's almost cut and thrust anyway. So it's
That's true. That's true.
That's awesome.
well, this feels like it's winding down a little bit. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go get a drink, and if you're all still here when I get back,
You can turn off. Oh, you're not gonna turn off your camera.
So you could probably just take it off spotlight and everybody.
Oh
can-
yeah, yeah. Let's do that. That's a really
Should we
good
stop
idea.
the recording as well?
Uh,
Um,